Hi, I'm Aaron Dean, and this is Advocate Today. The WNBA says that it is committed to player safety after an airport incident involving Brittney Griner and a social media personality. It happened at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. Police say Alex Stein ambushed Griner, pushing his way through her security guards. The confrontation was captured in a video that he uploaded to his YouTube channel.
Is it true you had to have sex with Vladimir Putin to get released from Russia, Britt?
Get out of the way, dog.
Britt.
Get out of the way.
Britt, is it true you had to...
Get out of the way.
What about his wife?
What are you doing?
I'm trying to talk to Brittney. Hey, Britt.
Like this?
Do you still want to boycott America, Brittney?
Stop.
Get off me.
Stop. Stop.
I'm weird. Why? She hates America. What about the merchant of death, Britt?
The WNBA called it inappropriate and unfortunate. The Players Association is urging the league to make changes to travel regulations. Well, Illinois now has a new law protecting books from being removed off shelves at public schools and libraries. The governor of Illinois signed a new law which will go into effect on January 1st. Libraries must have a Bill of Rights in order to keep state funding. Supporters of the bill say that the goal is to prevent censorship that can marginalize people, ideas, and facts. The law is the first of its kind in the U.S. It comes amid a record number of book challenges in the country.
Book bans are about censorship, marginalizing people, marginalizing ideas and facts. Regimes ban books, not democracies.
Federal protections for books could be on the way. President Biden announced a new federal coordinator would be addressing the increase in book bans. June is Pride Month, and the Trevor Project is getting the word out about celebrating the intersectionalities of the LGBTQ+ community. Dr. Myeshia Price is the Director of Research Science at the organization, and they are working to understand the experience of being Black and queer in America. I spoke with Dr. Price about the difficulties, the injustices, and even the joys that come along with intersectionality. Dr. Price, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, what exactly is intersectionality and how does it impact someone's everyday life?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, intersectionality is this framework that was popularized by Kimberly Crenshaw, and it's used for understanding how all of these sort of independent aspects of your identity sort of intersect. So social identities at this individual level, such as your race, ethnicity, or gender, or sexuality, are all shaped by this interlocking system of privilege and oppression at the societal level. So I'll sort of bring that down a little bit to sort of explain it in a way that suggests that you have all these different pieces of who you are, and they kind of combine in a unique way. Oftentimes they're stigmatized when we think about them as sort of stigmatized identities that are combining in a way that offer unique forms of stigma. And so it's not just because, you're not necessarily because you're Black, but because you're a Black man that may offer you a different experience from someone who may be a Black woman, for example, or someone who might be a white man. So all these different aspects of who we are sort of interlocked and interchanged in a way that we can't really separate them. And they impact how we operate in our day-to-day lives and how the world sees us and treats us.
As the Trevor Project's senior research scientist, how can we become more competent in our knowledge about intersectionality, and how do we start those conversations, about it?
Yeah, one of the things that we can always think about is sometimes I think that we as humans, right, we tend to think of this person's like me as soon as we find out that they're like us in one way, right? So we're like, oh, we're the same because of X. We both went to the same school. We both come from the same neighborhood. And we kind of tend to forget that there's other aspects to who this person may be. And so I think one of the things that we could do is try to step back and figure out who they are as a whole and how some of those pieces may differ. And some of the experiences that they may have had in the past may mean that they are bringing different things to the table, different sort of hardships, or even different experiences of joy, right? That they may have had that others that may seem exactly like them may not have had because of a different aspect of their identity.
Well, and like you mentioned earlier, someone's intersectionalities might showcase, histories of oppression or harm, or like you said, or in some cases joy or whatever. So when we look at intersectionalities of like being Black and queer, there is a lot of history there from both
Yes.
sides. There's systems of oppression that fight and try to work against both of those things. That's a lot.
It is, right? So you think about someone who would be Black and queer, and they could be experiencing not only not only discrimination and physical harm and stigma based on their sexual orientation or gender identity, but then you also have some of that based on the race, ethnicity discrimination, and historical trauma that we have in this country and worldwide, to be honest, right? Based on being a Black person and existing in the world. And so when you have those two things, and oftentimes it can mean in the very places that would have been protective, right? Perhaps in the Black community, you may be experiencing some of the stigma based on your sexual orientation or gender identity, or in the queer community, you're experiencing racism. So you do experience some unique forms of oppression because of that. But again, reminding us about that potential for joy, something I like to think about a lot. We can also think about how it can be protective, right? So we can also realize that there are a lot of lessons that you can learn through experiences of growing up and being socialized as a person who may be experiencing racism, and to be able to use that in your experience of experiencing discrimination based on your sexual orientation or gender identity. So you can sort of pull on some of those strengths that you learn from history, being taught from older people, passed down through the family, of like how to deal with racism, and some of that knowledge can be translated into how to deal with homophobia. And you can also, by having all these different aspects of your identity, you can pull on them, right? And you can say like, well, this space isn't necessarily this space isn't necessarily safe for me and my gender, but it's absolutely a place where I can thrive as a Black person. And so that may be protective for people to be able to pull on all those different aspects of who they are and to find some form of protection there.
Do you think there's anything missing from the conversation about intersectionality? Are there any points that are being missed?
Yeah, I think what I just talked about is a great one. I think a lot of times the conversation is there's all these intersections of identities, and because a lot of it is sort of based on how they can contribute to unique forms of oppression and harm, you tend to forget about how they might actually also contribute to benefits. Another thing that I've pointed out in the past that involves people who are multiracial. So there is a unique experience of being multiracial in the U.S. and other places, in the sense that there aren't a whole lot of multiracial heroes in the past. There isn't a designated holiday. There's a lot of erasure when it comes to the multiracial identity. But also being multiracial means that you learn pretty early on how to navigate different cultures, how to how to talk to and experience different communities. And I think that is obviously been very beneficial for people as they begin to navigate the world as they get older. So there's definitely nuances to things that may be both protective and both a risk factor for folks. It's alarming, some of the things that we're finding, particularly with Black, trans, and non-binary youth. That's a public health issue as far as I'm concerned, when we're looking at the rates of past year, having considered suicide in the past year, seeing more than half of youth who are Black, trans, and non-binary young people reporting seriously considering suicide in the past year. So that's definitely alarming. Some of the things that I think I do like to point out, however, is while we do find that they're higher, I would say that there are some things that we're seeing that they're pretty similar. We're not finding a lot of, for example, we're not finding higher rates of family rejection in youth of color, LGBTQ youth of color, compared to, white LGBTQ young people.
Thanks to Dr. Myeshia Price for joining me. Visit thetrevorproject.org for more information and resources. The Advocate Channel, Equal Pride, and Out Magazine are joining with iHeartMedia and Procter & Gamble for one of the biggest Pride celebrations online. The Advocate Channel is the official streaming partner for Can't Cancel Pride, and guess what? It's going into its 4th year. This year's host is Jojo Siwa, and you can watch Can't Cancel Pride on the Advocate Channel at advocatechannel.com and stream it live on the app. Can't Cancel Pride begins streaming June 15th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And thanks for joining us for this Advocate today. I'm Aaron Dean, and we will see you next time.